our special guest here, Joshua, is um, a long time tiny house lover, and he's a tiny house dweller also. But he's been doing trailers for tiny houses since 2015. But what I really wanted to mention was his book that he's had out. It's called Tiny House Basics: Living the Good Life in Small Spaces. Is that right? Did I say that right, Joshua?
That is correct.
All right.
100%.
Well, he's got a book out. You can get it on Barnes and Noble or on Amazon. Any of those places. If you want to check out his book, put in a plug for that. But this morning, we wanted to talk and zero in on trailers. So Joshua's our guest this morning, and we'd like to turn it over to him and let him. It's gonna kind of play out like this. He's going to be discussing. It's going to be back and forth, but he does have some photographs that we're going to be talking about. And then if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and put that in the chat. Obviously, the trailer is the most important part of the most important, I'm going to say the most important, because without a proper trailer, you don't have a foundation for your tiny house. You don't have a way to keep it level and to move it. The good thing about it is, these are movable tiny homes. So you really got to start out with the right trailer, and we're working on, starting already to draw up some designs for trailers as floor systems. So Joshua, why don't you go ahead and get us started, and then we'll kind of do the dissertation here, and then we'll do Q&As are available at the end, and Leanne will keep an eye on, and if there's something that's pertinent, feel free to interrupt. You can also raise your hand, like she said, and you can be recognized that way. So go ahead, Josh.
All right. Thank you, Robin. So I guess a quick little intro is me and my wife, we decided to do a tiny house back in 2014. And my wife has a history in interior design. I have a history in metal fabrication, custom trailers, and I also came from aeronautical industry. And so when we set out to build a tiny house, we saw the tiny houses that like Jay Schaefer was doing. They were like kind of 16, 18 feet. And those were really, really cool and cute, but a little bit small for us. And then we started thinking about, we watched, I think, the documentary Tiny: A Story of Living Small. And we really related to a lot of people in that story, which had larger houses. And we're like, okay, so what is the biggest tiny house that we could do ever? And back in 2014, we were like, okay, let's do a 28-foot tiny house. That sounds massive, because it was almost double the size of what other people were doing. And so we started trying to figure out the trailer. So we I've built many custom trailers before. We're trying to figure out how can we do this 28-foot tiny house trailer, and what would it look like, because the one thing I saw in the past is tumbleweed was around back then. And a lot of people are doing kind of modified car haulers, which you would have the fenders, which I'll just go ahead and screen share this photo. So you would have the fenders, which you could see right here, but the decks, everybody was building in between the fenders. And so in general, that's about 82 inches of width in between here. But I know that the legal limit was 102 inches wide from, outside of the tires to outside of tires. So that's why we're like, okay, well, why are we losing all this space? We really need to build out over those fenders. But back then in 2014, that was like faux pas. Like nobody would do that. They're like, no, you have to build in between. So when you're adding 4-inch thickness of walls, we'll just say 3.5 inch for the studs, 1/2 inch interior paneling. You're minusing 8 inches, 4 inches on each side. It's a pretty narrow walkway. And I had friends that were, built on tumbleweeds that became friends, and it just felt really narrow. So what we did is we set out to design a trailer for us that we would encapsulate the wheels, and we would treat the wheels like a window opening. So I remember the gentleman on Monday talked about that, which it was great to hear another builder, just confirming that you should treat the wheel like a window opening, and you ran a header across it. And that's what we did in 2014 is we actually didn't do fenders. We just had them bare wheels. And then we built up and treated that like a window opening. And we built a 102-inch wide buildable space tiny house trailer. And that was like the very first of the tiny house basics trailers. And going forward, we just, set out to do this design where you can uniformly insulate the whole trailer deck from 100 to 2 inches, the full interior, the full width, including that fender area that you can see right here. But the trailer at the design, I'll just kind of go forward, is like they would have welded flanges on the outside that would kind of create this thermal bridging issue where you'd have an uninsulated trailer frame on the outside. So we set out to design something that you can uniformly insulate, as we kind of showed there on the picture here. Here's one example of like having a trailer frame right here that we could uniformly insulate. And so we came out with this design in 2015 after we're just recently living in our tiny house for our second trailer that we started building. And, the old design at the time, which is still current for some trailer manufacturers, is you have to actually build a wooden subfloor. So we designed ours to uniformly insulate like this. And so kind of fast forwarding, to now, we build about 400 to 450 custom tiny house trailers a year. And everything we did in 2014 to now, every single trailer is custom built for each client, their design, their length, their capacity, kind of what they have in mind. So we are truly still custom and tailored to each person. And, and we offer lifetime consulting on all of our trailer customers' builds, because we, as tiny house dwellers ourselves, we're really just trying to like forward the movement, but empower people to build their own tiny houses and to build it with a solid foundation. Because once you build the trailer, once you build the tiny house, you can't change the trailer. So, for peace of mind, getting it built correctly, handling the proper amount of weight for your design, it's just one of the things you just don't have to worry about going forward. Because, truth be told, there's so many things you get stressed about and worry about as you're going through your tiny house build. You need to not stress about the things that happened in the past. You know what I mean? Like, you get started on a great foundation, you move on to the next step. You finish your framing, you do it properly. And that's the way I think just tying in with the NOAA certification is just so perfect for DIYs and builders, because they're held accountable to certain steps to make sure you've done it right. Because I always feel that, if you did it right the first time, you never have to worry about it. You never have to question it. So
Let me jump in here, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
Joshua, while you have these photographs up. Let's take a look at, first of all, the flange that you were talking about there. If you'll point out with your cursor there, right there where that flange is. So guys, that's basically, there's a looks like a 2-inch by 6-inch tube steel. I don't know whether it's 6-inch, but it's a tube steel runner that goes front to back on that thing, and then they weld a flange, and that one looks like it's 2 flanges welded together, because one looks like 4-inch and one looks like 3 inches or something. But anyway, there's just probably about 3/8 of an inch thick steel right there, and now your floor plywood's going to sit right on top of that, and then your 2x4 is going to sit on top of that. And when you do that, there is no insulation between the outside and the inside, especially right in that corner, that inside corner there where the wall comes up. You really have no insulation. It's just 3/8 of an inch steel, which is with 3/4 inch plywood on top of it. And so I think that's what you were talking about there. Also, can you tell us on that fender, see where that L angle, or I guess it's an L angle, a piece of steel sticks up about 1.5 inches there. What is that for? Can you explain that?
So this isn't our trailer, but this is what they call a fender flashing. And it's kind of like an option that you can add, where they're saying that you're attaching your drip edge to on your your rain, your vapor barrier. But really, this can be accomplished with flexible window flashing tape. So this is something we have tested, and we've done it a couple of times. But honestly, I'm all for like cheaper and better ways to do things. And just because it's an option, like on our trailers, it doesn't mean I'm going to say, hey, you got to get it. this can be easily accomplished with the flexible window flashing, because like, as mentioned earlier, if we treat this opening like a window, you're going to flash it just like you would with a, flexible window flashing to accomplish that.
And
But
also,
basically
if
this
you
is a
notice,
metal version of that.
yeah, and also notice the angle of the trailer fender on the one trailer, and look at the angle. It's the square box of the trailer fender. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this is called a Jeep style fender. It has the 45-degree angles just like a Jeep Wrangler does. So that's kind of its nickname, is a Jeep style fender. The other fender is a radius fender, which is a rounded fender. That's probably what most people have seen. That's a pretty common trailer fender. And then, optional, there's these square fenders. So the square fenders, as mentioned by the gentleman on Monday, these should not be structural. You should not be load bearing on these. You should treat these like a window opening, no matter if you're doing Jeep or square. But it's kind of, when it comes to the style of it, it really comes down to preference on how you want to do the trim. And, yes, it'll be easier to do trim and the shear wall and siding over a square fender, because you just have, 90-degree angles, just right angles to cut. A Jeep style fender, you're gonna have a little bit more extra work to cut that 45. A radius fender, a rounded fender, like the previous photo I showed, it's gonna be more work. So I think that totally comes down to preference on, when you're framing and doing trim.
On the trailer that has the 2x6 in it, what are the cross members? Are they 1 inch by 1 inch steel, or it's hard to tell
Yeah,
from
so this trailer from another company uses a 1x1 square tube underneath the trailer frame. So you have to build a 2x6 wooden subfloor to drop it into the trailer to give it strength, and you have to bolt it to the trailer frame. And see, I added up on a 24-foot, I think a 24 or 26-foot, it's around 450 pounds extra added weight for the lumber that you're going to add to the trailer to give it strength. So one of these trailers, they say, oh, we use less steel, or no, they don't say we use less steel. Our trailers are lighter weight, but the reality is, to get to this point, when you're laying your plywood subfloor, you're adding 500 pounds of extra weight and cost to pay for the lumber and build out the subfloor to get it to, I say, ground zero of being able to lay your plywood subfloor. So a trailer really should have cross members inside the trailer frame like this. So this is 82 inches between these fenders. These cross members are inside the trailer frame. So they're giving it that rigidity to, resist flex. When they're out underneath the trailer frame, like this 1x1, there's nothing resisting a flex of that trailer frame. So
except for the 2x6.
Yes. Yeah. Except for the 2x6. So the wood structure added to it. So,
and then, a lot of times, we talk about insulation. You've got foam, looks like you have foam board insulation that's cut in there, and then you foam it in with some cans of foam, I guess is how you do that. This other trailer, and do you have a pan on that, or what's on the underside of that?
Yeah, so this is a customer photo, and this does have the steel flashing. So I could I'll pull up another photo that you can kind of see a good example of the steel flashing.
Yeah, but we want to come back to this one, but go ahead and pull up the other one. But what I wanted to point out was there's no pan underneath the 2x6s. So there would still need to be what I call a rodent barrier, when you're talking HUD standards and HUD homes and mobile homes, they have a rodent barrier of some kind on the underneath of the mobile home, so that the critters can't get in. So and into your insulation. So with that 2x6 trailer, you can put some wood or plywood or something on the bottom, I guess, for a rodent barrier, and then insulate it. But if you just insulated it, and let's just say you used R19 fiberglass insulation, if you've ever seen something going down the road with the insulation blowing out from underneath of it when they're moving mobile homes, it's because that rodent barrier has gotten deteriorated over the years, and that's what that house would look like without something. If you use that loose fill fiberglass. If you did spray foam, that's different. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out too.
Yeah, and here's a photo of a trailer with that steel flashing installed. So we do steel flashing as an option because we are all for people finding, or helping them find ways to save on costs for their build, because this is steel flashing is very labor intensive to install and do, because we're actually doing 4x8 sheets of sheet metal, and we're welding them and painting them to match the trailer. So, I mean, it's a beautiful finished product, but you can do, as you said, optional ways yourself, whether we've had customers do, 14-inch galvanized steel rolls of flashing, like you can get at Home Depot, and you can run those lengthways and bolt them to or screw them into every cross member to accomplish the same goal. It just kind of depends on how much effort you want to put into this first stage. But you can get the steel flashing like this, which is, we have, it's 4x8 sheets, it's the full width of the trailer, and they're welded in sections of, we have beads that are about 2 to 3 inches long, every, 6 inches of spacing. So it's securing the flashing very well to the trailer, but it does allow water to drain out if there is a problem. If you get some type of leak, water gets in the subfloor, it can come out. So we don't recommend sealing off that bottom, completely, because in the case of emergency, water will be able to get out if the subfloor floods. And I know with like kind of the previous Q&A with Noah, that's, you guys are recommending vent holes. So it's good because that should be recommended, and we don't need to change anything because we've always allowed water to get out of the subfloor with that design. But it prevents, it provides a solid foundation to lay the plywood subfloor, the insulation inside the trailer deck, and it protects from underneath from rodents, raccoons, opossums. We have those in our neighborhood underneath our tiny house. We have a couple regular skunks that eat our cat food, but they never can get inside that flashing because the gaps are just so small. So you just don't have that problem. So, and it's a nice clean finish look. So
I got a couple of questions on this trailer too. So sorry, every time I see stuff like this, it intrigues me. Do you know how long this trailer is overall?
Yeah, 37 feet by 10, so 370 feet. Well, it's a little bit over that. So this part right here is 37. Then we have a 2-foot bump out. So we're basically on this one, I was trying to max out like 399, just try to get as high we can to the 399 mark. But because in California, our physical limitations to actually build a trailer is 40 feet. So this trailer is, this was 35 from here to there, 2-foot bump out. So it's a 37, including the bump out, and 10-foot wide deck.
Okay.
That is a big trailer.
360 square feet or something like that.
And I towed it. It's very big.
Well, you towed it without a house on it.
Yes. An F-150 can't handle the house built on top of it. So
no. The pan that you're talking about there, 4x8 sheets. The main runners that you have running down there, are they 2x6 main runners, or did you use 2x8s on that long of a run?
This one was 2x8s, but yeah, it will kind of we'll do 2x6 for the main frame beams right here. And then when we reach the point of about 36, 37 feet, then we'll do 2x8s. And then when we're going to, because the largest trailer we build is crazy big, it's 52 by 12 foot wide, like we do goosenecks that big. And then when we're going above like 42, we will do I-beams and kind of change it up. But it kind of, since everything is truly custom, we will switch it up depending on what they need. But this one was 2x8s. And then the cross members on this one were 2x4 by 8, or by 18. 1/8.
I got a hand raised over there.
I raised my hand because Naomi has a question. Do you mind taking it?
No,
quickly?
Go ahead.
With the belly pan slightly open, does moisture enter and dry? If it enters, is there a concern it impacts flooring by going through the insulation?
From a practical aspect, or just living in a tiny house for 8 years with this style trailer with the flashing, there's even in heavy rains, there's no evaporation up underneath. The evaporation happens with exposure to open air on the outside of it. So even, we even moved our tiny house originally in November 2014 in the rainy season in California. And people used to say about the flashing, like, oh, you need flashing to protect from water splashes. But the reality is you're only having water splashes in areas where something is contacting the ground, which is the wheels. And that's what the fenders protect against. So when we moved it, our whole entire bottom of our trailer was, just bone dry. And we moved it in the rain because there's just nothing contacting the road. And when it's parked, to really hone in on that question, there is no kind of evaporation or water rising underneath the trailer and permeating that trailer frame, because a lot of these flashings are kind of like overlapping too. So like this could be like the box tube, like that. Flashing is kind of going underneath, and then there's gaps a little bit. So it would have to be a forceful pressurized water to get up to there. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, our main concern is the condensation, of heated interior, or a pipe leak or something like that, where or a roof leak or a water leak around a window that would get in through the wall and get down into the trailer. And then, especially if you have loose fill insulation, which we don't recommend, we like the closed cell spray foam, or the foam board like Joshua does. Which doesn't matter if it gets wet, but if you have anything loose fill that gets wet, then obviously it loses its insulation value, and we got issues there. The other thing is, Joshua said he had 4x8 sheets, and this is actually a 10-foot wide, so it would be 4x8 sheets going the other way. But when you have 4x8 sheets like this right here, the belly pan would go up to like it in this picture right here. You see the 2x, are those 2x5s or 2x6 rails, or that 2x8? Those look like
on this new
2x8.
photo,
Yeah,
the new photo. Yeah, so this is a 40-foot by 10 bumper pole, and these are 2x8 box tube frame, and then these
so
are
when he
2x4.
puts a pan underneath, he's got to allow that the what am I trying to say? The pan would be inside the 2x8 runners, I guess. And so you would have 3.5 inches or 4 inches of insulation in there. The other possibility would be to put the pan at the bottom of the 2x8 rails, and then you'd have to have some kind of braces running down from the a little piece of 2x4 tube steel in the center there to keep it supported. But then you could actually put in more insulation, 8 inches of insulation in it, if that pan was welded to the bottom of the rail rather than the bottom of the cross members there.
Yeah, and I have a photo of that exact situation, because we can do that if requested. So here you can see this is a 34-foot by 102-inch wide trailer, and we have the flashing. So it does take extra work on our part, but depending on the application, like I said, everything we do is just very hyper specific for every client, because every tiny house is different. Everybody has different needs. So this one, the customer wanted to be able to insulate that full 8 inches of deck. And so you could see right here, we added spacers. And so this now flashing rests below that of, at the full, underneath the 8-inch frame, because this is a 34. It was a big beast of a trailer, so it had 8-inch beams. So you can see these 2x4s, and then it has the spacer, which was
and on the outriggers, what did you do on the outriggers? Because those are only 2x6, look like 2x6s on the outside there.
Yeah. So these are still the smaller. The main frame is 8 inches. So you have this one, you have like 6 inches of insulation, and then here you have the ability of up to 8 inches. Okay,
so you basically put the pan on the bottom of the 6-inch rail, and And then did you angle it down to the bottom of the 8-inch, or did you make it square across
It's straight
there?
across. Yeah, it's
Okay.
straight across. Yeah. And
Okay.
the customer could have done 2x8s, but it would have just increased the cost exponentially and not really added
Yeah.
the benefit too much. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I got that. I was just going to say if you had angled it down from the 2x6 to the bottom of the 2x8, that would have added an average of 7 inches of insulation instead of 6 inches. And it would have been the thicker insulation would have been in the interior where you're going to have your heat, because 4 inches of that outer rail right there is going to be covered with a wall. So anyway, yeah, this is an interesting design, and this is a large. What did you say this one was? 40 feet long?
this
30,
this particular one is 34 by 102. And this
34.
trailer has, yeah, and I still keep in contact. This photo is from like January 2016. And I've still recently talked to the customer who house is built. She's moved it like 5 times. She was in San Diego to Pacific Northwest, Arizona, back to California. So it has moved a lot. And this is a big trailer. And so this, frame design too, with that uniform insulation, was able to handle any type of, all these different climate changes that she's been going through. And yeah, she's still living in her tiny house this up to last week. So
Wow. Good deal.
Pardon me. Is it okay? I have a couple, and one of your customer, it's not really a question, one of your customers who is a NOAA member, and says that he sometimes uses trailer from Joshua and often don't go with the steel pan. I use corrugated plastic sheets attached to the cross members with long self tappers and fender washers. This allows me to secure continuous foam board under the cross members. He sent me a picture in case anyone is interested.
yeah,
Sure.
that is, yeah, that's an awesome suggestion from Andy, and a great way to really kind of cut down on cost. But it's really, it's accomplishing, like Andy said, is accomplishing the exact same purpose. It is something that is sturdy enough to mount to the bottom of the trailer, to hold insulation, and accomplish the same exact goal. So that's the thing we love about,
That's a plastic. What did he use there, Joshua? Or
I think he
Leanne?
said, what is it? What was it, Leanne?
Corrugated plastic sheets attached to the
Yeah.
cross members with long self tappers and fender washers. Okay,
That'd be
and
great.
then Betsy, our good friend Betsy Barber, who's with us today, says the wheels seem pretty far back in this design. Is there a reason?
Yeah, so I will tell you exactly where the wheels are on this trailer. They are, and I think it's the perspective too, because I was on top of a ladder when I took this photo, and I usually take a lot of the trailer photos with a wide angle lens. So it seems very far back, but that trailer is actually, on that trailer, it was 205 inches back from the front of the deck to the fenders. And then the rear is 119 inches. So that is the center of the fender right here, was a 60% from here to there. And this point right here is 40%. So it seems like they're really far back, but they're actually, it's just a perspective of the photo.
And that's something we should probably bring up too. At 60-40 is rule of thumb whenever you're building trailers, 60% to the front, to the tongue, but here's the deal, guys. You may want to design a little bit different because it's 60-40 in the weight. So if you're going to be putting your bathroom and your loft in the back of the trailer, there's going to be a lot more weight in the very back. If you're going to put the bathroom and the loft in the front of the trailer and your kitchen in the front toward the tongue, you may want to move the center of your axles a little bit closer there, so that you want 60-40 weight and not necessarily 60-40 in distance. Right, Josh?
Correct. Yeah. And also in a real life experience, if we've had customers do, no lie, stone fireplaces in the rear of the house. So we've bumped back the axles to handle that kind of weight. It's always better to have more weight. If you're going to have really heavy things, it's always better to have them in this area or in the front area, to have lean more on tongue weight than it is on tail weight. When we moved our tiny house last week, a very stressful day, but it's been parked for 8 years. We moved it to our new location. We bought land in Sonoma County. We moved it, and ours is actually a little bit tail heavy, and because of just our kitchen cabinets in the front. So we actually took out a lot of things in our house, but it actually added ballast in my trailer. We did this 2014, right? We built and designed our house. We didn't actually know how heavy they would be. Our house ended up being way, way lighter than expected. A 28-foot tiny house, ours weighs around 11,000 pounds. And I actually had to add more weight as a ballast in the tongue area to help it with better toe characteristics, because it was a little bit more weight in the back. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is like, we do have this Fender location as the ideal location for most designs, like 99.5% designs. But if you are going to have extremely heavy things in the front, we can modify that Fender location. It's not a problem to just move them up, but generally I like to favor towards keeping them where they're at for best towing characteristics, or we can scoot them back if you're doing something very, very heavy in the back, like a stone fireplace. Only done that a couple times, but it's been done. So
Yeah, and we had a guy that he used to take 60-pound bags of concrete, and he put a dozen or more 60-pound bags of concrete in the front to give him some tongue weight, because it would fishtail. Without that, when he was towing it to the shows, he would tow his house around to the shows and stuff. So absolutely. Good point.
We did concrete patch because we had to repair some patches anyway on our new driveway. So I just I'll just put it in the tiny house to add some ballast. And
So you use the same thing, bags of concrete?
yeah,
All right.
yeah, because if it breaks, oh no, it was the asphalt patch, because
Okay.
if it comes out of the bag, it's not gonna, mess up our hardwood floors. So
all right. While we're on the subject of this, are these tires regular car tires, or are they different?
Oh, all trailer tires are intended for trailer service only. So they are always going to be a trailer service tire. They're 10-ply radial tires. So they're not bias ply like the old, kind of old school tires, on vintage cars and stuff like that. So yeah, they are 10-ply radial trailer service only tires.
So in other words, it's not something you're going to put on your car, but you're going to pump it up to 90 pounds pressure sometimes. It's not like 32 pounds in your car. And I know I've seen these trailers when they move. Sometimes they'll bring extra tires because they're susceptible to getting a flat when they're moving their tires, especially if they've sat around for a while and start to dry rot. You might have some issues with that. So just be aware of that. If you've had your trailer around for a few years and it hasn't been, a lot of people will put covers on their tires to try to keep the sun from beating against them, but tires just sitting there will dry rot, and you may have some issues when you try to tow them. I see Land's hand up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead with the question.
Well, go ahead and wrap that up, Josh. Wrap up that last.
I was going to say, always check the sidewall. Our trailer tires on our tiny house, because we just moved it, were 80 pounds at cold. So I pumped them up to 78. Check the torque on everything. And for 8 years, generally the life you would say is a tire, any tire, car tire, anything has a life of around 6 years. But if they're well protected, preserved, covered from UV exposure, you can get a lot more life out of them. So moving our tiny house, I spent a good amount of time of just thoroughly inspecting my tires, but they've also been out of the elements. They've been covered by a deck on the front end, and then they've been covered with tire covers on the rear. They were in perfect health. I inflated them a week ahead of time up to 80 and checked torque, and lubed the axles and everything like that. And no problems when moving, but protecting them from UV exposure is such a big deal. So, and it's cheap. You can get cheap covers on Amazon.
Explain torque, checking torque. What does that mean?
Oh, torque. I don't have it. Do I have a bolt right here? I have a bolt. I was just playing with a nut and bolt. Here we go. This is just for our audio heater, but I don't even know if you can see this. But here's a bolt. and the nut. So the nut, this will pretend this is the lug, the stud on the wheel. The torque is when you're putting the lug nut on, it's how tight it gets. So you have to have actually a torque wrench to calculate how tight it goes by foot-pounds for a trailer tire. And you actually have a wrench to it, and it has a little meter on it, and it tells you how tight it is actually getting onto that lug nut. And to achieve proper torque, you need a torque wrench. You can do a tire iron, but if I always say that's a great tool to have, is a torque wrench. But yeah, you torque down the wheels in a certain pattern, and that makes sure that they are properly attached to them and evenly.
Yeah, and you want to do that every time you move your home too, guys, because they can. We had our tiny house taken to a show by a professional, and on the way back we were following him, and one of the tires came off on a Sunday night. Going down 75. Here goes the tire passing up the house, and then it went off onto the side, and he was able to get off to the side, and we were able to find some new. We had to drive out the lugs had been broken off, because it was loose. He said he checked it before he towed it over to the show, but he didn't check it after the show. And so definitely check your lug before you move to make sure that they are torqued down properly, or else you might lose a tire along the way.
Yeah, and a quick tip to that is when you pick up the trailer, like right from our factory, within the first 25 miles, I would retorque it. And then at 100, I would check it again. And then when you start to build, and then you're good, once you get to your spot usually. And then once you start building, once you put the house on top of it, check the torque again. It's just, it's just kind of one of those things that happen. It's really easy to do, but if you do it right, kind of like how we said on doing the steps for Noah, you do it right the first time and you keep checking it. You just, in your little routine, you never have to worry about it.
All right. Sorry, Leanne, go ahead.
That is quite all right. No problem. I have a question from Ron. What is the price on a trailer like this?
Because we do so many different variables, we have about 390 different models, and they range from 12 feet all the way up to 52 feet. And then we have our 8.5 foot wide, 12 foot wide. I can't really just say, I mean, I would have to look it up and get back to you, because the best way to do it is actually, you can just request an easy quote on our website at tinyhousebasics.com. You can select any size you want, and then we can send a quote. Because since we do manufacture in several different locations in the US, it would be easier to say one price for everywhere. But when we could actually get steel cheaper in Texas, we apply those, cost differences from Texas to California, because California is more expensive. So yeah, the easiest way to get a price on any size would just be on our website at tinyhousebasics.com, and we will personally give you details and specs on whatever trailer you're looking for. But this particular trailer, I don't know the cost offhand, but this was a 24-foot plus 8-foot buildable deck on the Gooseneck hitch. So this is 8-foot long deck. This is a 102-inch wide deck, triple axle, 21K. And then the rise, this looks like our standard rise of about 48 inches above the lower deck. This trailer also has drop axles. And because you could see, an easy way to tell if it has drop axles is if the hub is pretty close to the frame like that, it has drop axles. So it's only 22 inches from the deck to the ground, and then 48 inches right here. So you have a lot more room for activities and headroom in the main space of the tiny house.
So let's get back 22 inches from the deck to the ground without a drop axle. What do you have?
26 inches.
26.
And this is, yeah, and this is unlading. So we are giving you the measurement as you get the trailer. When you're building, it'll probably go down about an inch on average. Some companies will say what the height is with weight on it, but we give you the height without anything on it. So you can calculate, but yeah, right. The trailer will always kind of settle on a suspension about 1 inch after you build the tiny house.
That's a good rule of thumb. 22 inches with the drop axle, 26 inches without the drop axle.
I have one more question, if I could.
Yeah.
Betsy had to leave the room for a couple minutes, but she's asking now, did you cover if off-road tires should be used on rough terrain or are the truck tires sufficient?
Very good question. Trailer service tires are usually the best. I would stick with trailer service tires. If you're going on off-road terrain, and it depends on how heavy the house is, what it's like, you can air down the tire if you are going slower. So when you air down the tire, you're going to have, so a tire could be like this, right? An inflated tire. When you air it down, it'll have a wider contact patch. So the tread will it'll be a softer ride, but I would not do that at freeway speeds. Only if you're going, in general, 9 times out of 10, keep it at its rated, pressure. But if you're on a rocky road and you're worried about maybe, rocks poking the tires, you can deflate the tire to have a wider contact patch, not much pressure putting onto the rocks or terrain. So, but always stay trailer service tires no matter what. And this is a drop axle. This is a drop axle. Yeah. So here's the main frame right here. And see the spindle comes underneath and attaches to the tube. So see, this is the tube. It's always going to be at the same spot. But instead of going straight out to make the trailer higher, it goes up. And so there's some little misinformation about drop axles out there where people have said, oh, they're not as strong as a regular axle. But the thing is, well, drop axles have been around since the 20s, so it's not a new technology. When you're getting a 7,000, we'll say a 21,000 pound trailer rated, that's the rating, 3 7,000 pound axles, so 21,000 pounds, and you get drop axles, you are getting a 21,000 pound rated drop axle trailer. So it is an even exchange from a straight axle to a drop axle. They can handle the same exact, weights. They're rated the same exact thing. It looks different, but there is no evidence of drop axles failing on the same weight, the same weight rating trailers. So it gives you peace of mind that you're buying drop axles, you're getting the same rating as you would on a straight axle design. It's just building preference. Drop axles are very popular because you have a lower approach of entry into the house. So like 22 inches off the ground, that's a lot less steps, and we're building a lot of tiny house trailers for people that are doing single level living. And when you get, a little bit older, your knees aren't as fresh as they used to be. So it is easier to kind of step into a lower trailer. It's a lot less steps, it's a lot round, and you get that direct benefit of interior space inside the house. So that's the huge benefit of drop axles, but it's never anything you have to worry about.
So when you're doing a loft and you have a drop axle, you're maxed out at 13.6 height. So if you can drop down 4 more inches, that's going to give you that 4 more inches in the loft that you might need in order to have some more headroom in a loft also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you do a drop axle, the tires are going to go 4 more inches into your space too. So factor that in when you're thinking drop axle. It's not the end of the world. I mean, most of your floor is dropping down, but the tires are the same height tires on a drop axle or a straight axle. So that tire is going to move 4 inches up and into your fender. The fender is going to be a little bit bigger. And while we're talking fenders, make sure you insulate your fenders too, guys, because a lot of people forget about that. That's just a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch steel, and that's it. And you need to insulate that with some foam board so that you don't get condensation on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like a standard fender is about 10 inches above the deck on a standard axle. The drop axle will have a 14-inch high fender because the tires are still the same. They're same relative height to the ground, but the actual deck of the trailer is dropping that 4 inches. So that is a really good point to bring up. Did you want to talk about weight? Because I remember that was something that you wanted to
Absolutely,
discuss.
yeah. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
I have a picture of a trailer getting onto the scales. So let me pop this up.
Yeah, because you need to know, guys, how many axles. I mean, there's a 2-axle trailer right there. And with 2 7,000 pound axles, you're at 14,000. And that might be a 5,200 pound axle. I can't tell from you probably could, but I can't tell. But for that size house, which looks like it's about a 20-foot house, 252-pound axles would probably do it. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we actually kind of take out that, problem for you on our website, tinyhousebasics.com. You go to the tiny house trailer section. There is a lot of recommended capacities for each size. But we do fine tune it on each individual, but that kind of gives you kind of an example. But for capacity wise, if you're looking at every trailer is tandem axle, at least tandem axle, triple or quad axle. If you're looking at building a tiny house that is like 16 feet or less, we'll probably recommend a 7K trailer. You can do that and you'll be fine. When you're going to 18 feet to 22, it can be like a 10K or a 12,000-pound capacity. That's 2 5s and 2 6s. When you go to 22, 24, we recommend 14K. And 26 feet is kind of that teetering point when most people kind of go to triple axle on 26 feet. But you can do tandem axle on a 26-foot, depending on kind of your design. But you might have to pay more attention into the actual weight of materials that you're using. But our formula that has proved very well, and this is something I've worked on for a long time, well, since 2015, of kind of getting averages of houses weights, is if you take the weight, if we're going to do an 8.5-foot wide trailer, and you do 500 to 550 pounds per linear foot of trailer deck. So if we do a 24-foot by 550, that's 13,200 pounds. You should get a trailer that can handle the next step up, so 14K, and then you are going to be fine. When you're doing a 10-foot wide trailer, a calculation that I figure out is you take the square footage. So if we go a 300 square foot tiny house and we times that by 59 pounds per per square foot of trailer deck, that's 17,700 pounds. So if you're doing a 30 by 10, you're so close to 18K, which is a triple axle, which is 3 6s. I would recommend going to the 21K. So 21,000-pound capacity. You're going to go to that next step up to handle that weight, and you're going to be fine. That is most tiny houses, they come out, on ones that we've done, they come out way less, like our tiny house that we're in now, which I'll show you, is around 11,000 pounds, because we did a lot of lightweight stuff to keep that weight down. But in general, get it, if you're at 26 feet, 28, it's good to go with a triple axle, trailer. And then when we're getting into like 38 feet, 40, 50, those are ones that we do quad axles. Or if it's like a 36 by 12, which we do, that would be a quad. That's kind of, we'll kind of work with the customers and tell them what our recommendation is. But we do kind of have a cheat sheet on our website to kind of calculate. But this is our house. This is a 28-foot tiny house. But we always say to get a triple axle in this. You're just going to make life easier, because that's a box. I mean, it's a big box on wheels that catches a lot of air. It was way better road manners on a bigger 26, 28-foot with triple axle. This other one that I showed you going on to the scales, I'll go back to that, is a 20-foot. That is plenty. Tandem axle doesn't affect its towing characteristics when moving it. So,
and I noticed on your house, you've got 2-foot cantilevers on front and back, so that's going to add some weight also when you're figuring out your weight of your house. If you're going to have a bump out on the back, or if you're going to have a cantilevered loft, like these has 2 cantilevered lofts, I guess, on it, that will add to your weight calculation when you're figuring this out. So yeah, just wanted to point that out. And I like your window there, that I see an open window there. That's one of the windows that you guys provide.
That is our Accordion windows that we've been exclusive dealers on them since I think 2016. And so we custom build these for tiny houses and regular houses. But ours is an 8-foot one, which I'm facing right now. But this is me right here. Imagine me right there. But yeah, this is an 8-foot Accordion window. And then we could do windows and doors. And we do these for tiny houses. We've done hundreds of these, and we ship them all over the country. I'll show you our
Cool.
newest tiny house that we are building for ourselves. And that one has the big accordion windows.
And just to point out, guys, on his house there, looks like he has a wood stove or some kind of a chimney coming out of it. If you are going to transport that, you got to watch out for bridges. You're at 13.6 and that sticks up a couple feet. You want to remove that before you go transporting your house and get it knocked off on a bridge.
Yes, we removed our the roof jack. It's a Duravent 4-inch pellet stove venting, and so we unscrewed it and pulled it out. So yes, because trees are your worst enemy when you're moving a tiny house. We got some battle wounds on this last move last week, but you know, you can't control the trees on the freeway. You can only control, you know, most of them on the entrance and the exit of where you're going. But you know, that is what it is.
Pardon me, I have a couple, excuse me, a couple questions. Matt is asking, how does a gooseneck affect weight since more weight sits on the tow vehicle?
Great question. So when it comes to from experience, so say your trailer is 30 feet long. Let me pull up my measurements. So 30 feet long plus the 8-foot gooseneck. So you'd have 30 feet plus the 8 foot, so 38 feet overall. We found that the best towing characteristics and weight distribution is we take that lower deck size, the 30 feet, and then we still keep the axles at 60% the way back. So they actually are kind of slightly, you know, back more than if you compare that same length of trailer to a bumper pull. But a gooseneck, granted, there is more structural framing and on a gooseneck on that front part. I'm going to try to go back to this gooseneck photo. Oops.
And also with a gooseneck, it's not on the bumper, it's actually in the bed of the truck when it's being towed. So that's the weight is in a different location.
Yeah, this is the best way to put all that weight right here, right over the axles. That is the ideal weight distribution. So this is 40% from here to there, and then from here to there is 60%. So it is the same measurements. And if you imagine that this is just a bumper pull, and then so this whole front section is longer, but the house that takes up this part is a lot less in weight than it would be, you know, this part. So we just found through experience that that is still the best weight distribution of doing based on the lower deck. From here, 60% and then 40% right there.
So where it attaches to the truck itself, the towing vehicle is actually over top of the axles of the rear axles of that vehicle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I have a photo. I will get, here we go. Found it fast this time. Let's see. Okay, so here is my truck and a gooseneck trailer. This is, I'll show you what the house looked like after it's done, but 48 inches rise right here. This has drop axles because I can see the little silver things are pretty close to the frame. And see, this is in a standard truck, this part is going to be right over the axles. But since I have a F-150 short cab, I actually have something that's called a B&W Extend-A-Goose. So it actually kind of hitches. I mean, it goes at a 45-degree angle and it goes down right here. So my hitch is actually right here, but I just have an adapter that I can scoot it back because I have a little truck. I'm only equipped, I can tow 12,000 pounds, but I only do the bare trailers. And so, but you could see as an example, this hitch is going right above the axles. It's putting all the weight right there. It's not leveraging the weight back here. So you can tow more with a gooseneck, or you can tow a bigger gooseneck trailer than you would be able to do a bumper pull. You do have that weight pushing down right in the center of the axles.
I have a question. Let me get back to that. Well, Betsy first wants you to know that she loves your house and setup. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Matt, any recommendations on where and how to get weighed?
Oh, let me see this last photo. I can go back to it, find it. Cat scales is really a great one. So you can Google cat scales, CAT, and it's yellow and black. And you can find their locations throughout the US. It's about $10 to get weighed. So to get an exact weight, when you pull up with the tiny house and the truck, they will give you front axle, rear axle, trailer. But on a lot of them, it's easy. The way to get the actual physical house weight is what we do is we'll drive up on there with the trailer, get the total weight combined, and then we'll go and pull the tiny house off the scale, disconnect from the tiny house, and drive back up with the truck. I get the exact weight of the truck, and I minus that difference, then I can get the exact weight of the house. So that's how we personally weigh the houses to get exact weights, because I'm all about like the data that I've accumulated from our customers and clients since 2014. So that's kind of where we come with our numbers, is just from hard evidence of what customers have told us and stuff like that.
So the scale will give you a ticket that will show you the scale weight, correct? You get a
that
ticket
is correct.
Yep. And then
you're allowed
another good place that I have used is dumps. A lot of places where if you have local dumps where you take your garbage and your trash and everything, they have scales because they're going to weigh how much trash you dumped off. So if you can get a ticket from the dump if you're going to if you've got a dump closer than a regular scales.
Yeah,
just another idea.
Oh, I like that. I think we have one more. I'm gonna share it. I actually wrote a blog on how to calculate the weight. It's on noahcertified.org if you search for the blogs. And then Michael is asking, in a rural area as a builder, the highway patrol has mobile scales to bring to your location for a small fee. Okay, that was some good information, not a question. Thanks,
Okay.
Michael.
So this is the house that you're building, right? Right now?
Yeah, this is our second tiny house. We've been living in this tiny house for 8 years, and we love our tiny house, but we wanted a little bit of extra space, and we like to do we've changed our tiny house so many times, interior, but we really want some extra room. So we are building on what is technically kind of the least popular style of trailer. It's a Deckover. It's maybe like 2% of all the trailers that we build each year are Deckovers. That is where the deck is over the wheels. It's a higher deck. You really can't have lofts in this style. But we wanted a single level tiny house. So, and we always like to figure out, learn by doing. And we're like, well, let's do a single level, no fenders, because we have these big accordion doors, these accordion doors on the corner. So yeah, this is going to be our annex. This is going to be our living room, our hangout spot that we're going to we're going to pull it right next to ours and kind of have a deck kind of separating the two. And this is going through the NOAA certification process. So I think we just passed the spray installation process on this. And we're doing that we're certifying this one. Super excited for this one. It's been going slower because we always put customers in front of ours. So this one really just kind of like when we get free time, we're kind of working on it. But yeah, this is our latest.
I'll mention a couple of things to everyone here on this here. When you're towing a vehicle on the road, 8'6" is the maximum width, 13.6 is the maximum height. And what he's got here is a little 8-inch overhang or something on both and an overlay on the sides, which is not a bad idea, guys, because it's certainly going to help you. One of the biggest things that we're always fighting is moisture getting in when you don't have an overhang. The only difference here would be that when he moves it, he would have to pay $35 or whatever it is for a special use permit in order to be able to tow it over the highways. And that's another thing I want to say to you. 8'6" or 102 inches is the maximum that you can do yourself. But if you like 10 feet wide or even wider, there's some wider ones out there too. If you like that extra elbow room, why not go 10 feet wide and then just pay you don't have to go buy a truck to move it because you're only going to move once or twice, that kind of a thing. Just get somebody with a CDL license and pay them. They've got the insurance and everything to move your tiny house for you. So you want to talk about the 10-foot wides and over 8'6" wide stuff?
Yes, this is a 10-foot wide. This is 10 feet wide with 10-inch overhang. So this house, as it sits, is 11 feet, 8 inches wide. So we are just under that threshold of 12 feet, but the trailer is 10 feet wide. We wanted the dramatic overhang. 10 foot wides is really where it's at. That is the trend. I mean, that's been building up for the trend for past several years. And 10 feet wides really allow, a greater flexibility to long-term tiny house living. And you just have that 15% more square foot, on the inside of width. And so, yeah, and this is actually the single most popular trailer we're building this year, not the Deckover, still not that popular, but 30 feet long by 10. That is like, I think that is like the golden child of 2022 for size of trailers that we're doing. And yeah, we planned on 30 by 10 last year. But yeah, so 10 feet wide, we have a whole article on our website, tinyhousebasics.com in the blog, but on what you do for a 10 foot wide. The permit is anywhere from $14 to $35 for most states. If you're looking to move one, most people are permanently temporary for tiny houses. They're not us. It was 8 years before we moved it again. But the premium to move a 10 foot wide tiny house is really on average around like $300 to $400 more than what it would have been on an 8.5 foot wide. But you're just gaining so much more interior space, flexibility, and design. I mean, we call our tiny house that we live in, which we still love, but we call it the hallway, because it's like we're kind of like, sliding through between each other. But on our 10 foot wide one that we're doing right here, it feels so spacious, and it feels so silly when we're in it. We're like, oh my gosh, like we're just, we just have so much room. So I always kind of say, if you are considering a 10 foot wide, or even if it's just kind of, you should do it because never had anybody regret, doing the 10 foot wide. It's been a very, very popular, size, and the logistics of moving it is not that challenging because, you should just hire a transporter anyway on a full size tiny house. We've moved a couple like small tiny houses, and it's not for me. And I have a lot of experience towing, probably like 40,000 miles of towing in the past like 15 years, but just no, it's just not for me. Leave it to the professional. They're insured. Something happens, it's on them. And yeah, it's around a $300-400 premium from what we've seen for moving a 10 foot wide. So I would recommend it.
Right. I have a question from Ron. He is asking if your trailers are registered as tiny house chassis or park model.
So when it comes to registering, it depends on what you do after the house is built. So we can't, in California, we handle the registration for you. So we do California, Texas, and Pennsylvania. In California, we'll handle the registration for you. It is registered as a trailer when you get it. And that's like a permanent trailer identification. You get your license plate and everything. When you build the house, then you could change its category that it's registered as. So when you build a house in California, you can change that registration to a coach trailer, as California calls it, a tiny house, in different states. A lot of them will call it like a coach or an RV classification or something for the trailer. But when it comes to like insurance, or even permits, so we just purchased, acreage in Sonoma County for our tiny house, and I had to send them floor plans of our tiny house, the VIN number, a picture of my license plate. And it doesn't matter from, for us, and when it comes to insurance or most counties on how it's actually registered. But I do say that, most people are planning on, being permanently temporary, not traveling with them. Most people tend to keep it as a trailer identification or a trailer license plate if they're not moving with their tiny houses that often. If you plan on traveling, you can easily change it to a coach registration, which is a yearly fee, and then you pay sales tax in addition, or you pay registration fee based on the value of the house. If you're moving regularly, I would recommend looking into that, but it definitely varies by state. But yeah, simple answer to that question is we can only register it as a trailer when it's that frame. It's when you build it, then you can change its designation and registration. And it's not a problem with California or most states, because they'll happily take your extra money if you want to change the registration. So yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, like, if you guys are interested in, building yourself, that's what we're really, empowering people to build their own tiny houses. And we're here to help people guide through that whole step of the way. You can go to our website, tinyhousebasics.com, and request a trailer quote. And we offer, included on all of our trailers, it's lifetime consulting for the course year build. Once you get your trailer, you're not done with us unless you want to be. But we are always happy helping everybody in every aspect of building, answering questions, 6 months to 5 years down the road. We love staying in contact, and really, it brings us great joy to really see people, taking that power in their own hands of building it, whether it's building from the ground up, using a builder, or using a builder and kind of subcontracting themselves. We just love to see the movement move forward. And, we always are available and love to be a part of that. So.
Yes, I do have one last question from Naomi. I'm newly playing with SW. Do you have a preference for an SW program to quickly pull up your builds, measurements, weight limits, etc.?
Are you talking about SolidWorks? Is that what it's referencing?
I don't know. Naomi?
Yeah, so
oh, she said software used during build. Sorry. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, so since we have so many variables, the best way is just to reach out to us and let us know what size trailer you're thinking of. I could tell you, the dimensions, layout, and everything, and then approximate weights on those trailers. Because we have 390 different variations for our trailers. They are really fine-tuned for everybody's individual need. So yeah, the best way to reach out to us is info@tinyhousebasics.com. But there's also a lot of resources on our website at tinyhousebasics.com in the blog section, as well as our YouTube channel, a lot of videos and stuff. And we always take recommendations too, if you'd like more on a topic.
Cool.
Great. One last
Thank
question
you.
for you.
Okay,
Joshua.
Oh.
The height on a Deckover from the ground up.
36 inches.
36 inches. Okay, so we got 22, 26, and 36.
Yep. Yeah.
Good numbers. And then it drops an inch when you put the weight on, approximately.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And the reason it's 36, as the quick answer, is because we just have to have that deck encapsulate the tires. And even with a little bit of sag, we need to allow the travel of the springs. So that is why it's 36 inches. And as you can see right here, and also when you're doing a design and we have our windows and doors right over the wheel wells, or where the wheel wells would have been. So this design wouldn't have been possible with fenders. So that's another reason why it goes a Deckover. Way easier to frame too. But you do lose space. That's the negative. You're losing that interior height.
Yeah, no. It's but if you're not putting a loft in, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, Joshua, it has really been informative. I was concerned about going up to the hour, but we ran over and it didn't even feel like it. It's like, wow, we're just all this information is so great. I do want to kind of wrap things up, guys. If you want to stop sharing, so we can your picture there, or we can leave it up there. It doesn't matter, either one. But anyway, I wanted to tell everybody about if you want to get a hold of Tiny House Basics, we are talking about having Joshua come back on at one of our Tiny Talk sessions, where he has purchased some land in Sonoma County, what they call a fire lot, and has put a tiny house on, putting another tiny house in. We want to talk about, that process and how that all played out, because Joshua has been in this game for quite a while. He's a wealth of knowledge. I want to remind you of the Tiny House Basics, Living the Good Life in a Small Space, and on Amazon. And if you're interested in getting Joshua's book,